Hey everyone, how are we doing? It's me, it's Jean, and I'm finally here on my YouTube channel. So if you're seeing this, this is where you're seeing it at, or you're going to see a clip for the first 6 minutes I think I can put on TikTok. So, why am I here? This is the infamous delusions and psychosis of religion. And that's how I'm opening it, is to talk about the difference between the two. And the whole reason I'm doing this is because I want to give my perspective on what it's like to find yourself in a religious situation that you can't get yourself out of, and my perspectives on what to look for if you happen to find yourself in a cult. I said it. I said it. We are in 2026. And if you are under the age of 40, maybe 35 into your 30s, you might have an idea. Anything before that, unless you've been in one, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But you will. You'll see the dots connect, I promise. Because right now, like I said, in 2026, you turn on your television and you're going to see it. It's unfortunate that we're here, but we are here. And honestly, I think it's because we haven't seen anything in the United States quite like this, ever, honestly. However, there's quite a few similarities to things, right? Um, of what's going on right now and what's happened in the past, but it's been on such a very, very small scale that if you weren't alive, you wouldn't remember. What am I talking about? I think the biggest one that comes to my brain right now is Waco. That was a doomsday, one of the doomsday cults that's out there, right? And it ended horribly. Many people were unalived, including children. Um, Guns were involved. The FBI was involved. We screwed up as far as the FBI and the government side. And you're going to hear me say this repeatedly: government and religion should not even come close to coming together. And I actually was raised that way, as I've mentioned before. Um, 14 generation William Brewster. I understand the concept of, getting away from political scrutiny for wanting to practice your own religion, however that may look like. We all know there's a debate, I guess you can say, of the good and the bad of that settlement in Plymouth, right? I'm digressing, but I'm going to get into delusion and psychosis. Sorry for that digress. I'm going to do that a lot because I'm a tangenter. So, truthfully, that's why I'm opening a podcast, because I like to talk and hopefully can stay on point. I got some notes here, and I've already been through them once, but because I'm such a newbie at this, this is my second time. So, I really pray that y'all can hear me through this mic. Okay, anyways, so first thing you have to understand about delusion. In some ways, especially in this world now that we live in, we're all freaking delusional. We all have our own delusion of things, of how things should be or how they should not be or whatever. What makes it awful is if you're an awful person and you're awful to people about your delusion. I don't care what it is. Delusion is delusion. I'm mostly leaning towards the psychosis of this, okay? Because the more and more I got into the delusion part, I realized, wow, we all kind of are delusional in some ways. We're all kind of crazy in our own ways. This world, this planet right now in 2026 makes us a lot of crazy anxiety or anxious, and that's just in the United States. I can't speak for anybody outside the United States, but at least in the States, if you haven't felt crazy at least once, then you're not paying attention to anything, or you're a kid and you have hopefully no affiliation or ties, and that your parents are keeping you away from all of this and just letting you be kids. Because if you're an adult, we have some delusions. Where it crosses over into psychosis, now I had said in a previous video, I think I posted it, about certain psychoses that are on the medical journal or for, yeah, mental illness. It will tell you that about hallucinations and, you know, that's where that gets caught in terms of said wrong. People say, "Oh, she's so delusional," or "He's so delusional. They're having hallucinations." No, that's they're in a psychosis. And you don't have to have a medical mental health diagnosis to go into a psychosis. That's the part I needed to learn on my own. I thought it was just, people who already have certain mental illnesses that cross over. Now, that might be true. I have no degrees, just to throw out there. I'm not a doctor. I don't diagnose anything. I'm just a regular person. As a matter of fact, my occupation is a server and a bartender, but I have a love for history. I did 1 year of college, and my major was history and English. So, yeah, this is just for entertainment and perspective. This is not education. All it might be somewhat a little educational, but I don't stand on the fact that I can go into more than what I already study. I like to think of it as I'm in a permanent school right now, and I am going back to college here very soon, but it's not for history. But I have a love for it. I was raised around it. My dad was a historian by hobby. My brother is a historical nerd. My mother, she's loves history. Just to give you kind of that little background about me and where this is coming from. Now, where this is coming from, I might have to do a whole separate video of why I'm personally choosing to do this. Um, but first, I want to dive into those signs of if you think or feel like you're falling into a psychosis of any kind. Now, M my favorite, I say this sarcastically, but it's the first one I can think of, is obsession, um, obsessive behavior. Now, that might look like or feel like someone chirping in your ear, if it's a pastor or whatever. I'm gonna use the word pastor a lot because it seems to be the most common, but this goes across everywhere across the board. Forgive me if I repeat myself. Like I said, I already did this video, so I can't remember what I covered and what I didn't, or what I said and what I didn't say, because I have a lot to say. Now, with the psychosis and obsession, if you happen to have somebody chirping in your ear telling you that you're not doing enough, that you're not praying hard enough, that whatever you're praying on, right, doesn't seem to be coming in. So, a person in power, if it's a pastor or a rabbi or um, preacher of some sort, is telling you that you're not doing enough. You need to come to church more, you need to read your Bible more, that what you are doing is causing God to react to you. Um, and this could be anything. It could be a sick parent, it could be a sick child, it could be money, like money problems or whatever, it doesn't matter. They start telling you to start excessively doing things more. It's a red flag. It's not even just obsession. It's a tactic, to be honest with you. They will persistently push fear on you that you are either not doing enough or you're continuously sinning and that you're a sinner and that you deserve divine punishment or you're receiving divine punishment because you deserve it. Excessive confession, where that organization or church or pastor, priest, whatever, is telling you to confess. You need to confess those sins, everything that's making you feel bad. You need to excessively confess them. So then the next thing you know, you see a person or you find yourself in the confession box. If it's a Catholic church or a Scientology, they make you go into those little rooms and they push and push and push and push. confessional boxes in Catholic churches, I've not really had that experience where they force, and they say it's your fault. It's usually you repeat a certain amount of prayers, and you go about your day, and then you can have your Eucharist, which is, um, if you know, you know. That's what that looks like. I've never personally had a bad experience. Some people in the Catholic Church have. However, they have the wrong priest, and, we all know. So that's just one example of that. Where if you find yourself constantly asking or needing that reassurance from your organization or your congregation, um, it comes off insecure. That's how it looks. That's basically what they would call it, is that person just being so insecure. But really, they're so insecure in their faith that they need to constantly ask for reassuring. Am I giving enough? Is this it it's psychological warfare is that they're causing and creating inside your brain. It will, like the last one on here I have, there's more, but anxiety, it's restless sense of doubt and guilt. Again, that you're just not doing enough, that, you're not worthy. I'm not worthy to pray. These are just things that have been said. I heard people say, I'm not worthy of God's love, which is a lie, you know. But a spiritual battle. That's the other thing too. This I didn't say in my last video, but I'm going to say it this way. You know how you see in like all these entertainment movies, right, that have been done over the years, last 20, 30 years, especially like medieval ones, right? You see that person standing out there with a sign, and they're doomsday. They're talking about the end of the world. They're talking about the apocalypse. Folks, this has been going on since I think the 11th century, even before then. That's just Western history. If you go back to Eastern further, you still had those people standing out there. They were doomsday. God's coming, God's returning. Which if you're Catholic, that's what Easter is for. But they take it to a whole nother level, like a whole nother level. That if you don't, if you're not baptized, you're going to hell. Now I'm about to spit all kinds of different religions, right? But they all connect because they all do the same shit. You're going to hell for doing this or doing that, or the end of the world is coming and you have to make a choice. You have to get into your Bible and you have to start studying Revelations, and you have to start being part of, this isn't Catholic, but being part of I think it's 144,000. I think that's Protestant. I could be wrong. I know a lot of religions, I get them confused, but that's what they preach, right? We're seeing it now in our government. We're seeing it now with what is happening in the world with doomsday cults. And I'm going to give you a list, yes, a list of cults that have been doomsday cults. And guess what? Shocker, nothing's happened. But this one makes it worse because they're pushing it to happen. And you go throughout history, it's always been talked about. It's always been talked about. End of the world, doomsday. But the spiritual battle that I'm referring to is any form of angels and demons, that they believe that, they're going to fly, these angels and demons that you could see are going to fly and swoop down, and you're going to see them battling, right? That has been a conversation that I've always known since I've always been alive, because I'm, like I said, I'm Catholic. So the angels and demons, Dante's Inferno, like, it's always been a hot topic. But these people really truly fall into the psychosis and say that they can see these demons and these angels fighting, or they can feel it. No, that's just your conscience. That's what the human conscience is the angel. And then you hear the devil. That's the opposite side of empathy, which is apathy. That's your demon. That's your inner demons. It's what makes you mean, whatever. That's like the baseline, right? But no, these types of people who are involved in these cults take it to a completely extreme. That, every person walking around, if you do not follow God's word, is a demon. Or The most infamous one recently that had a follow through would be Chad Daybell. Do you remember that story with Lori Vallow with her children and what happened with that and how normal she was, if you want to call it? This is again with a delusion. She may have seemed delusional to a lot of people, but nobody really knew how far that delusion went until her children were missing. And prior to that, with her ex husband and stuff like that. But she found herself in this Mormon version out west. I can't remember the name of the cult, but they believed in these angels and demons so much that they believed that God put a number on their forehead, which was kind of stolen from the Catholics, I add, in Revelations. Actually, I don't know if that was Catholic, it may have been Protestant. Anyway, he believed that he preached that there was a number on their forehead that would show if they were it would show their soul. It would tell you if you were an angel or a demon. And that's why Lori Vallow's children were unalived, is because they believed that they were demons or that they were taken over by the vessel of demons and that they would never get them back. So he took upon themselves to do what they did. Gross, right? Gross. Well, there's quite a few of these. That's the most recent one that I can think of, right? Of the list of cults that I have found. There are some new ones. They keep quiet, and that's kind of how they fall under the radar. That's how we fell into the problem that we have currently. It's because they were there. They were always there, right? At least in the last 50 years, they've always been there. But it's how they rise, and then they fall, and then they rise. Well, the most currently one that I'm talking about is evangelical church. I said it. I say it that way because I have family that are a part of the evangelical church. I grew up right next to it and did not know it until many, many, many years later. And I no longer speak to that family because the other side of it, too, is what they teach you in cults is that if you have an opposite point of view or an opposite belief, and in this case, it was political, that just because someone else in my family voted for someone else, automatically we were evil, we were wrong. And they tried to say a whole bunch of crap on social media about certain family members. But that's how far they get inside your mind. They get you to attack. First thing they do is attack. And that's every cult. Lori Vallow isolated her family. They were all bad. They were all mean. And now I'm not comparing my family to that, just for the record. I'm just giving you the idea that they're bad because somebody in my family voted for somebody else. We all know who that is. Um, because and just because of that fact, we're labeled now something this and that whole side of the family. Because I spoke my mind. If you're not kind and you are very rude and very mean, then at first I won't be rude and mean. But if you push and push and push, I will stand up for myself and I will stand up for my family. That's just how I am. That's how I was raised. Now, with the evangelical church, we're seeing it now mixed in with our politics. And most people don't understand or even remember or want to remember that this happened in the 90s. The last time we had to fight for women's rights or abortion rights or any of that stuff, the way we've started to happen, we started to see it in 2016, happened when I was a child. I was probably like 11, 12 years old, which was the early 90s. That's when the evangelical church started to rise up. But because of all the things that the people that were around at that time, stopped it from happening. And 2016, with that election and how everything started to get overturned and actually happen, everybody was just like, oh, this is not because of that. It's not because of that. Well, I'm going to connect those dots for you to show you how the evangelical church is now taken over through the Heritage Foundation. We've all, you might have heard about it. People may have mentioned it because of Project 2025 or 2026, 2025. I can't remember. Because of that, people started to kind of hear about the Heritage Foundation, but they don't know. They don't know. They still don't know. But you see it. I'm going to leave that there because I probably just lost a lot of people by even me saying that. So, and not every evangelical person out there right now. As a matter of fact, the last article I read recently that they're starting to turn away from it, and what's left is extremeness, and that's what I'm getting into. Is any form of extremism? It's everywhere. It's all over the world. Because human beings are human beings, and we're all flawed. But one thing that I did actually want to further into is the our last thing on my list for these signs. I'm just going to read them all through again because I didn't say every single one because I was elaborating on quite a few of them. But a persistent fear of sin and divine punishment, seeking constant reassurance, excessive confession, performing constant cleaning or cleansing. That's kind of in the spiritual world. Not too many people in religion do I know do cleansing. Could be wrong though. Self-punishing rituals, which the only one I know of with the self-punishing is the extremeness or extremism of the Catholic Church. I forget what they're called. They're based out of Italy, from what I understand, and they self-harm. They self-harm themselves with whips. Now, some people will argue to say that they don't do that anymore, and as a matter of fact, the head guy of the Heritage Foundation is one of those people that belongs to that particular organization or religious organization, and he's come out to say that he doesn't do that particular practice. But they are here. Like I said, they were based out of Italy, but they are here in the United States. You just don't hear about them because they're very quiet. They're not a secret society, but they're very quiet, and that's how they start, under that radar. I'll keep going. Let's see, where was I? Self-punishing rituals, obsession, excessive worry about committing sin, compulsion, excessive prayer and confession, which I think I just got into, and anxiety, a relentless sense of doubt and guilt. Because doubt and guilt is what they thrive on. They're hoping that you do feel doubt just a little bit, or you are feeling guilty, anything. Now, how do these people get away with what they're doing, or how do they get in? How do they infiltrate? They infiltrate mostly by seeing who you are, kind of people are around you, the state of emotional state that you're in, mainly because those three things alone make a human being vulnerable. They thrive on that vulnerability. They want to know what you're so vulnerable about or what you so fear. They turn around and manipulate it and use it against you. Who else does this? Narcissist. Now, narcissism and cults, those two words have been so overused, but they need to be because they're literally everywhere. Full blown narcissism, that's personality disorder, that's a whole different thing. But it's not when you look at some of these leaders. And it's not me who has said this. This is actual like psychology based information. If you do your own research, you'll see what I mean. Because it takes a certain kind of cult leader or leader to be able to infiltrate and grow on the scale that they grow. They need people to thrive. They need you to thrive, to stay in existence. Because without it, it's just like a psychosis of one person. But the thing about psychosis is that it can spread. It's kind of like I've heard over the years people say, you know, psychosis, if you're looking in the medical journal, not two people can have it because usually in psychosis in the medical journal means you have hallucinations and you can't share hallucinations, but you can share fear and you can share paranoia because those two things spread like wildfire. and they thrive on that and they use it and they know it. This is personally why I'm not religious, is because I've had my own personal experiences with all types of religions and all types of different spirituality because I've walked in this. I've made it a mission of mine to understand since I was 15 years old, and my dad told me to go out and explore every single religion there is so you can find one or find your own belief that fits you as an individual, because he knew that I couldn't fit into a box. I'm so incredibly grateful, because if you knew who my dad was, that speaks volumes. And I'm actually going to get into who he was and why this is important to say who he was, because I think some people might have a little bit of a misunderstanding about who he was or what he stood for. Now, granted, I was 17 when he passed away, but my mother got 25 years with this man, the love of her life. My brother was able to get at least 20 years of his life as a father. So I'm finally speaking out now as an adult because I wanted to make sure that these things were factual and I knew him as well as I felt that I did, because I was only 17. Why am I bringing him up real quick? Because I'm almost at 30 minutes and I don't want this to go in longer. He was a deacon. I'm sorry. He would have been a deacon if he would have survived his cancer. He was on his way. So he was this close. So I've always spoken about him as a deacon, but my brother corrected me and my mother. He wasn't actually a deacon yet. He was a Eucharistic minister in the Catholic Church. He was on his way to be a deacon in the Catholic Church, and he also went to the seminary for 4 years. And then later went into to college, New Hampshire College, where he met my mother, or around the time when he met my mother. So when it comes to religion, if it comes off like I'm arrogant, I don't mean to be. It's just because I've spent pretty much my entire life, minus the 8 years, first 8 years of my life when I was in Massachusetts and I didn't know what a church was. I now understand why, and I'm going to leave it here. The reason I didn't know what church was for the first 8 years of my life is because the church that was in my little tiny town in Massachusetts was a cult covered under the banner of Christianity, and the man was a pastor. I'm not going to say what church it was. It is what it is. My dad discovered very quickly that this was not a church he wanted to put his family in. Not until I was 9 years old when we decided to go back to Erie, Pennsylvania, closer to his house or closer to where he grew up, to where he was comfortable enough to send my brother and I into the Catholic Church where my parents were married. That's why I know what I know. And because I am who I am, I pushed back about 14, 15 years old. And then that's when he gave me that advice and it carried with me. And I just about most religions organized that are as a religion, I have met. The only person I've never met in is Scientology, and they are technically classified as a religious order or a church. I've never met anyone personally, but I've met Mormons, I've met Protestants, I've met Catholics, I've met Muslims, I've been actually Jewish, American Jewish, not Zionists. Um, yeah, and I've been in a mosque. I think it's a mosque where you sit down, and it's Middle Eastern. I was in California, so I was able to experience that. I'm going to scare a lot of people when I say this, and hopefully I'm not whatever, but I know I've met Satanists. I've met a lot of pagans of all different, just like Christianity with paganism, there's many umbrellas for different types of paganism. So yeah, I've learned a lot in the 45 years, soon to be 45 years that I've walked on this planet. So I just kind of want to share with you guys my perspective and what I've learned along the way and some pretty interesting facts. And like I said, I'm going to leave it here. Is the next episode that's coming is going to be all about satanic panic and how it ties into what is happening now and what we see now. All right? Yay, welcome. And I hope this really helps some people, and I hope it resonates with some people. And I wish all of you love and being healthy and kindness. And yeah, just remember, always be kind. Stay authentically you no matter what, because I'm authentically myself all the time, 24/7. I hope you are too. So cheers. Hopefully this worked and this microphone was on my side. All right. Cheers, y'all. Till next time.